In a quiet suburb of Portland, Oregon, in 2018, the residents of Greenfield Oaks Apartments had a routine. A rhythm. Familiar hellos, dog-walking nods, the hum of lawnmowers on Sundays. Nothing out of place. That is, until he moved in. Unit 3B had been empty for months. Then, one October morning, a man in his early 40s, lean, polite, and eerily unmemorable, moved in. The leasing office only had the name, Daniel Walters. He didn't decorate his balcony. Didn't attend the HOA meetings. He nodded but never smiled. But he paid his rent early. Never complained. And so, he faded into the background like a ghost in plain sight. Until the smell started. It began subtly. Just a whisper in the hallway, faint, like old garbage, or maybe a forgotten takeout box. Tenants assumed it was something simple. Temporary. The building was old, after all. Old buildings creak. They leak. They smell. But then it got worse. The odor thickened, like syrup made of rot. It clung to your clothes. You didn't just smell it, you tasted it. Mrs. Henley in 3A was the first to knock on Daniel's door. Twice. Once on a Friday evening, then again the following Sunday. No answer. Just silence on the other side of that burgundy door with the dented peephole. That Monday, the maintenance guy, Tommy, was sent up to investigate. Tommy was a 62-year-old former plumber who never backed down from a clog or a critter. He joked his nose had retired from smelling decades ago. But when he reached the third floor, even he gagged. He knocked. Called out. Nothing. So, he opened the utility panel to check the HVAC vents. Maybe a dead raccoon. Stranger things had happened in Greenfield Oaks. Once, a squirrel chewed through an entire phone line. Another time, an entire beehive was found inside a dryer vent. But this? This was different. The moment he cracked open the panel, the smell punched him full in the face. It was stronger near Daniel's unit. Decaying. Wet. Chemical. Something was wrong. Tommy didn't wait. He called the landlord, and by noon, property manager Diane, efficient, unsentimental, perpetually holding a clipboard, was on the phone with the police. They arrived that afternoon. 2 officers in pressed uniforms with that, "we're sure this is nothing but protocol," attitude. They knocked, waited, then used a master key. What they found inside 3B wasn't a body. Not exactly. The apartment was immaculate. No furniture, no decor. Just one folding chair in the middle of the living room. No TV. No photos. The kitchen had 1 plate, 1 cup, 1 fork. The fridge was empty. The freezer contained a single-gallon-sized bag of ice. The air inside was freezing cold, every window shut, AC blasting full power. But the smell, somehow, was even worse inside. The officers made their way down the hall toward the bedroom. And that's when they found it. The walls. The walls were covered in newspaper. Floor to ceiling. Not taped, but pinned, each page meticulously straight, not overlapping. No visible pattern, just chaos. New York Times next to National Enquirer next to a faded sports section from 2003. Some were yellowed with age. Some had red circles drawn around seemingly random words. Others had large X's in thick black marker, covering entire articles. The carpet beneath the pins was spotless, almost suspiciously so. And in the closet, behind a false wall of newspaper, they found a large plastic tub. It wasn't locked. Just sitting there. Inside? Bleach. Several empty bottles. Gloves. A box of surgical masks. And a small, rusted handsaw. But no blood. No fingerprints. No name tags. No notes. Nothing identifiable. Daniel Walters was nowhere to be found. For days, the building buzzed with theories. Greenfield Oaks wasn't the sort of place that made headlines, until now. The local news ran the story as a developing situation, carefully tiptoeing around the facts they didn't yet have. Suspicious materials found in local apartment, the anchor said, trying to sound calm. The residents were not calm. Children weren't allowed to play outside. Pets were kept indoors. One woman on the second floor moved out that very week. She told her neighbor she'd rather commute from Gresham than live next to a possible Dexter. And yet, the investigation hit a wall. No criminal charges. No active crime scene. The police couldn't prove anything illegal had occurred. The tub and its contents were considered suspicious but not definitive. No missing persons matched Daniel Walters. No fingerprints matched any database. Then, someone checked the leasing records. That's when things got weird. The application for 3B was complete, the bank account used to pay rent. A series of prepaid cards, all registered under fake addresses. Even the social security number was one digit off from an 89-year-old man in Florida. Whoever had moved into 3B had constructed a complete, functioning identity out of paper, plastic, and precision, and then vanished. Diane, the property manager, was rattled. She'd processed Daniel's application herself. She remembered his eyes, gray, maybe? Or hazel. She couldn't be sure. He'd spoken softly, politely. Seemed almost shy. Said he worked remotely in data analytics. A job vague enough to avoid suspicion. But now, she couldn't remember what his voice sounded like. Or whether he'd shaken her hand. Or what car he drove, if any. And the security cameras? Here's the kicker. They didn't work. Hadn't in months. A budget issue. On the list, the HOA kept saying. So there was no footage of Daniel moving in. No video of him coming or going. The only proof he'd ever existed was his signature on a lease and a single blurry photo on the application, barely visible under a poor quality scan. Diane kept looking at that photo. The man staring back looked normal. Boring. So boring it was almost intentional. Greenfield Oaks became a different place. The friendly nods disappeared. People locked their doors during the day. Mail was double-checked for tampering. Someone started a Facebook group called Oaks Watchdog Society. The theories flew fast. He was a serial killer, waiting for a victim. He'd already killed, and 3B was his cleanup zone. He was CIA. Or FBI. Or hiding from them. An alien. A robot. A ghost. A drifter. A professional cleaner for the mob. But the most chilling theory came from a 9-year-old girl named Annie, who lived across the hall. One night, weeks after Daniel had disappeared, she told her babysitter. "I still see him sometimes." The babysitter froze. "You mean on the news?" Annie shook her head. "No. I mean in the hallway. Sometimes he waves. But he doesn't blink." 2 weeks earlier, across town, 28-year-old Kayla Monroe, a night shift nurse, had been reported missing. Last seen leaving St. Anne's Hospital after her shift at 3:12 a.m. Security footage showed her pushing through the glass doors, tugging her hoodie over her scrubs, her hair tied in a messy bun, earbuds in. She waved to the night guard, crossed the lot under the flickering yellow lights, and then, like mist in the early morning air, she was gone. No struggle. No signs of distress. No other figures on camera. Just Kayla walking into darkness. Her car, a silver Honda Civic, was found 3 days later. Abandoned in a strip mall parking lot. Not a scratch on it. No signs of theft. No fingerprints. No DNA. No fast food wrappers, no coffee cups, no clutter. Nothing to suggest a person had even sat inside. It was too clean. Detective Lorenz, the lead on the case, described it like this. It was as if someone had reassembled the car from memory. All the right parts, but the soul was missing. Inside the trunk, nothing. Not even the emergency kit. The only clue? The radio had been left on. A static hum, set to a frequency that didn't exist in the Portland area. Like someone had turned the knob slowly, deliberately, just past the edge of the dial. Detectives were baffled. But here's the twist. Kayla wasn't just another missing person. A year earlier, she'd been featured on the local news. Nurse subdues violent patient, the segment had gone viral on local stations. She had remained calm while a 6'4" man in a psychotic episode swung wildly at staff. Kayla had ducked, tackled, and restrained him until help arrived. Her training in crisis response saved 2 nurses from serious injury. Her photo was everywhere for weeks. Bravery. Poise. Grace under pressure. And, apparently, someone had been watching. When Kayla vanished, the case was treated like a priority. Posters went up. Tips poured in. Candlelight vigils were held on the hospital lawn. But nothing concrete emerged. Then came a phone call. An anonymous tip, from a male voice, calm, unhurried. You're looking in the wrong places. The nurse isn't lost. She's with someone. Someone who knew what she did. Someone who watched her stop the chaos, and wanted to see what she'd do when she couldn't. Click. No number. No trace. The call lasted exactly 13 seconds. Detective Lorenz replayed it over and over. The cadence. The cold confidence. The voice had no urgency. No threat. Just a flat declaration. And a faint echo, like the caller was in a large room, or possibly underground. The call, she was single. Lived in a small 1-bedroom near the Columbia River. Kept to herself. No history of violence. No stalking complaints. No shady exes. A few old flings, but nothing recent. Not even a dating profile. But someone had been paying attention. A neighbor reported seeing a man outside her window about a month before she vanished. Said he was just standing there, facing the building. Like he was watching the brick, not the people inside. No one else saw him. No cameras covered the alley. Just shadows. And then there was the notebook. Found inside Kayla's apartment, on her nightstand. Half full. Mostly grocery lists, shift notes, and doodles. Except for one page. Scrawled, jagged handwriting, not hers. I wonder how long you'll stay calm. I wonder what it'll take to make you scream. That page was torn halfway, like it had been added later, or stuffed inside. The paper didn't match the notebook. It was thinner. Yellowing. From an old pad, maybe. No fingerprints. But someone had left it there, in the most intimate space of her home. 2 days after the notebook discovery, Detective Lorenz got a tip from his colleague at Missing Persons. They'd been cross-referencing recent disappearances in the greater Portland area and stumbled on something strange. A pattern. 3 other women had gone missing in the past 18 months. All within a 15-mile radius. All between the ages of 26 and 32. All working night shifts. One was a waitress. Another, a janitor at the local university. One had been a night librarian at a private archive downtown. All vanished between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. None of them had been high-profile cases. No press coverage. Minimal follow-up. Families thought they'd just left town or fallen off the grid. But the similarities were too clean. When detectives reopened the files, they noticed something else. In each apartment, a single item had been left that didn't belong. In the waitress's apartment, a folding chair in the middle of the living room, identical to the one found in Daniel's unit. In the janitor's place, a gallon Ziploc bag in the freezer, filled with perfectly square ice cubes. In the librarian's apartment, a pinhole in the drywall, behind a stack of books, leading to nothing, but surrounded by aged newspaper clippings pinned to the back of the shelf. All subtle. All deniable. All deliberate. And now, with Kayla missing, the pieces were no longer isolated. Someone was staging scenes. Not just cleaning up, curating. When Detective Lorenz learned about Daniel Walters, the name on the lease at Greenfield Oaks, he paid a visit. The manager, Diane, handed over everything she had. The lease. The blurry photo. The prepaid transactions. And a detail that made the detective's blood run cold. Daniel had moved in 4 days after Kayla went missing. Lorenz returned to Unit 3B. The crime scene team had cleared it weeks earlier. But he needed another look. The air was stale now. Less of the chemical rot, more of that sickly nothingness you get in untouched rooms. He stood in the middle of the living room, eyes scanning the bland carpet. The white walls. Then he walked into the bedroom. Still covered in newspapers. Hundreds of them. Carefully pinned. And behind the false panel in the closet, he noticed something strange about the plastic tub. He crouched. The inside edge of the lid had indentations, tiny ones. Like fingernail scratches. As if someone had tried to open it, from the inside. But that wasn't possible. Was it? Around this time, residents of Greenfield Oaks began reporting something else. Not smells. Not shadows. Sounds. Scratching. Light tapping. Muffled, rhythmic thuds, especially at night. One tenant claimed she heard a woman's voice, faintly, sobbing. Maintenance checked the walls. Pipes, they said. Or rats. Always rats. But then a plumber found something odd, a gap between the drywall and insulation in Unit 3C, just one unit over. Inside the gap, a hidden vent shaft. Sealed off decades ago. It ran straight behind the wall of Unit 3B's closet. It wasn't the police. It wasn't a tenant. It wasn't even Detective Lorenz. It was the mail carrier. Janine Miller, a 5-year USPS veteran, wasn't one to jump to conclusions. She knew every mailbox on her route by name, practically every dog, and who was most likely to try tipping her with homemade banana bread. She'd been delivering to Greenfield Oaks for years. She knew the rhythms. Who got junk mail? Who still paid bills by paper? Who subscribed to what catalogs? And she knew that Daniel Walters never picked up his mail. Ever. By the 3rd week, his mailbox looked like it had developed gout. Stuffed. Overflowing. Credit card off, it was the trash. She passed the row of green dumpsters behind the complex every morning. Most tenants didn't even bother bagging things properly. Soggy pizza boxes, overripe fruit, Amazon boxes stuffed with styrofoam. But Daniel's trash? Always in black contractor bags. Tied tight. Double knotted. Janine happened to see him once, just once, disposing of one. Early morning. Hoodie up. Gloves on. Moving like he was taking out radioactive waste. What caught her eye, though, wasn't the bag. It was what slipped out of the top when he dropped it. A clear plastic sheet, like the kind you'd see in a painter's studio, or a crime scene. And something else. A used hospital ID badge. She couldn't see the name, but the layout was unmistakable. The laminate. The clip. She made a casual report to the leasing office. Nothing official. Nothing urgent. Just one of those, hey, probably nothing, but just FYI, kind of notes. The kind people write before someone says, "I should have said more." 3 days later, Tommy the maintenance guy was called to Unit 4B, just above Daniels. The tenant, a man in his 60s named Howard, reported a leak in his bathroom. Said water was dripping slowly from the light fixture. Smelled funny. Tommy arrived with his usual kit and a half-eaten Twix in his back pocket. He didn't expect much. Probably a loose pipe, maybe condensation from the AC. He unscrewed the light cover and almost gagged immediately. Not water. The droplets falling onto the tiles were brown, viscous, and stank like spoiled meat and ammonia had a baby. Worse? There was movement. Tiny, writhing things. Maggots. Tommy stepped back, looked up, and saw something that would haunt his dreams forever. The light fixture's rim was crawling with them, wiggling up through the hole. From inside the ceiling. He dropped his tools and ran out. This time, the police didn't hesitate. They returned with gloves, respirators, and a hazmat team. Detective Lorenz was called directly. Unit 3B was officially declared a hazardous site. They sealed off the hallway. Cleared the floor. Crime scene tape went up for the first time in Greenfield Oaks history. And what they found inside 3B this time would take days to process. Investigators had already searched 3B weeks earlier, but only at surface level. This time, they had cadaver dogs, infrared scanners, moisture meters, the whole forensic circus. It didn't take long. Behind the folding chair in the living room, where a small rug had once sat, they found it. A false floor panel. No more than 4 feet by 4 feet. Carefully cut. Seamless. Underneath, a cavity. 3 feet deep. Lined with thick plastic sheets, some stained, others clean. And inside that cavity, a metal box. Locked. The kind you'd expect to find in a military bunker, not a one-bedroom apartment. It was bolted to the floorboards. The team worked for 2 hours to extract it. When they finally pried it open, they found a pair of surgical gloves, blood-streaked and inside out. A USB drive, labeled only with a single letter, K. A small notebook, filled with names, dates, and codes. And worst of all, a clump of hair tied with a blue rubber band. Kayla's favorite color was blue. The USB drive was rushed to the forensics lab. It contained only 2 files. One was a text document titled K_observations.txt. The other, a video file. No title. No timestamp. Just a video, 4 minutes and 17 seconds long. They started with the text file. It read like a log. Cold. Clinical. Dated entries. All about Kayla Monroe. Subject continues Route B to garage. 3:14 arrival average. No variation. Observed subject restraining violent male. Calculated hand pressure at 70 psi. Controlled aggression noted. Subject remains unaware of surveillance. Responds to stress with tactical calm. Exceptionally rare. There were 42 entries in total. Each one more obsessive than the last. One line simply read, "I wonder if she dreams of the same darkness I do." Then they played the video. It opened with static. Then flickered into an image of a mirror. Reflected in it, a woman. Tied to a chair. Gagged. Breathing fast. Her eyes wide. Desperate. Her face, unmistakably, Kayla Monroe. The camera never moved. It didn't have to. The scene was shot from behind a wall mirror with a pinhole lens. A live feed. Kayla looked directly at it. Not screaming. Just staring. her expression somewhere between fury and pleading. And then, at the 4:03 mark, a man's voice, off-screen. "You stayed calm longer than I expected." Cut to black. Back at the station, Lorenz sat in silence, watching the last second of the video loop. He'd seen awful things before. Victims. Scenes. Crime. But this? This was something else. Someone had orchestrated this. Documented it. Curated it like an art exhibit of human suffering. And worse? He was still out there. Because every fingerprint on the box. Wiped. Every trace of DNA. Contaminated. Every code in the notebook. Encrypted beyond recognition. Daniel Walters, the man who never blinked, never spoke, never smiled, had been 10 steps ahead the entire time. When police entered Unit 3B with a warrant, they expected a body. What they found was worse. The living room was spotless. Again. The folding chair, gone. The rug, gone. The freezer? Empty, save for a single cube tray of clear ice and a lone label, Tuesday. The air was cold, humming with the buzz of the air conditioning set unnaturally low. The whole place smelled, sterile. Not clean. Sterile. Like a place that feared even the memory of life. The team split up. Detective Lorenz walked toward the bedroom, knowing what he'd seen the first time was only scratching the surface. In the bedroom closet, forensic tech scanned the drywall and quickly picked up inconsistencies. Tap here, solid. Tap there, hollow. The wall wasn't a wall. Behind it, a hidden hinge, painted to match the interior. It popped open with a soft click. What they found behind it stopped them cold. A makeshift padded cell. 4 feet wide. 8 feet long. 6 feet high. Lined with foam insulation boards, wrapped in old bed sheets and duct tape. The padding had been stapled directly to the drywall. The staples were rusted. A few had fallen to the ground. Inside the room. A thin foam mattress. A plastic bucket in the corner. Several broken zip ties still fastened to a loop in the wall. And on the floor, a half-eaten protein bar, molded at the edges. Blood smeared across the walls. Faint handprints. Some in patterns like someone had tried to claw upward. Or inward. As if looking for a door that didn't exist. In the far corner, one chilling detail. Scratched into the foam, over and over, a single word. Stay. It took only a few hours for forensics to come back with results. Blood on the foam. A match for Kayla Monroe. Fingerprints on the walls and bucket. Also hers. Food wrapper. The same brand she was known to eat on night shifts at St. Anne's Hospital. One protein bar. One woman. At least 10 days. She'd been kept alive, in that tiny room, drugged, restrained, watched. But where she went next, or if she ever left. That answer was still missing. The tech team found it hidden under the loose panel beneath the kitchen sink, wrapped in 3 layers of plastic, sealed with wax. Daniel's laptop. Custom built. No brand markings. Modified hardware. Encrypted to a degree rarely seen outside of intelligence agencies. But the strange part? It was already open. As if he'd wanted them to find it. No password screen. No login wall. Just one folder. Her. Inside, 812 photographs. All of Kayla Monroe. Some were zoomed in, her adjusting her rearview mirror. Others from a distance, her entering the hospital, buying coffee, checking her mailbox. Dates stretched back nearly 11 months. Almost every single day. Meticulously catalogued. Each photo had a time code. Weather conditions. Camera angle specs. Some were taken through glass. Some from rooftops. One even from inside a laundry room, facing the alley behind her apartment. The level of planning was inhuman. One image stood out. A close-up of Kayla asleep. Not through a window. Not through a lens. Taken from inside her bedroom. The laptop had no internet access. No saved logins. No traceable accounts. Just one offline directory with encrypted notes. But the encryption wasn't consistent. It was sloppy in places, almost like he'd changed methods halfway through. Digital forensics broke through one file, just one. A document titled eventualities.docs. It contained a table. Names. Descriptions. Psychological traits. Sleep patterns. Routines. Vulnerabilities. Kayla's name was highlighted. Next to it. Type 4, controlled empath. Resilient. Prime candidate for sequence 2. Under it, a series of words. Observe. Isolate. Break. Measure. Sequence. Not plan. Not experiment. Sequence. This wasn't random. Detective Lorenz went back to his whiteboard. Now there were 5 names. 5 missing women. 5 night shifts. 5 untouched apartments with eerie fingerprints left behind. But Kayla's case was different. She'd been found, sort of. Traces of her were found. Her time in that hidden room now mapped out by evidence and horror. And Daniel? He wasn't hiding anymore. He was curating. Crafting a narrative. One file, one photograph, one blood smear at a time. But why? Then came the strangest break. You're not asking the right question. You want to know where she is. But you should be asking. What has she become? D. Detective Lorenz stood in the Greenfield Oaks parking lot, staring up at Unit 3B. He lit a cigarette, a habit he'd quit 5 years earlier. 100 questions raced through his mind. But one kept coming back. Not how Daniel found Kayla. Not how he took her. Not even what he did to her in that cell. But why Kayla? Why her? There were others on the list. Other women. Other victims. But Kayla had been the only one who stood up, publicly, to chaos. She didn't flinch. She didn't run. She fought back. Was that it? Did Daniel see her strength as a threat? Or was it something else? Was it a challenge? The detective's phone buzzed. An alert from the precinct server. Facial recognition match. Location, Redmond, Washington. 200 miles north. Footage from a gas station security camera. Timestamp, 2:43 a.m. The image, blurry. Black and white. But unmistakable. Kayla Monroe. Or someone who looked exactly like her. Face thinner. Hair chopped short. Eyes vacant. She didn't look like a victim. She looked disconnected. Daniel Walters wasn't real. That name, the man, the ID, the signature on the lease, was fiction. A disguise. A mask worn by someone with no interest in being remembered, only feared. When the prints from the apartment were finally analyzed, matched, and cross-referenced through federal archives, the truth came out. Daniel Walters was actually Elliot Granger. A former paramedic. Once licensed. Once respected. Until 2013. That's when everything began to unravel. Back then, Granger worked in Sacramento. Night shifts. Trauma calls. High pressure. Fast decisions. He was known for being calm in chaos. Until one night, he wasn't. A patient, unstable, aggressive, non-compliant, reportedly spat in his face. What happened next was unclear. Witnesses gave conflicting stories. But what couldn't be denied was that the patient left the ambulance with a shattered orbital socket and a fractured jaw. Elliot claimed it was self-defense. But the court didn't agree. He lost his license, his job, his credibility. And then, he disappeared. Dropped off the grid. No tax returns. No digital footprint. No credit score. But he hadn't stopped working. He just changed careers. When the truth broke, the trial that followed exploded across headlines. Paramedic turned predator. The man in Unit 3B, who is Elliot Granger? And most chilling of all, the list. Because what they found in Elliot's rented storage unit, buried inside a locked Pelican case, chilled even the most seasoned investigators. A hard drive. 256 gigabytes of handwritten notes, observation logs, photographs, and a spreadsheet. A simple file. Titled sequence_list.xlsx. It had 12 names. Each with a date. A photo. A psychological profile. Each name belonged to a woman. Each worked in healthcare. Each had once shown exceptional calm under pressure. Kayla? She was number 5. Investigators combed through the list. The first 4 names? All missing. 2 in Oregon. 1 in Idaho. 1 in Montana. All unsolved disappearances. All nurses. All night shift workers. And all vanished within the past 4 years. Each one had a folder on Elliot's hard drive. Each folder had photographs, timelines, behavioral analysis. Even notes about stress reactions. Subject number 2 cried after 14 hours. Silent resistance observed. Impressive. Subject number 4 attempted negotiation. Calm voice. Failed to detect secondary camera. Each woman had become an experiment. And only one had made it out alive. Kayla. She was found wandering the side of a rural road just outside Redmond, Washington. Disoriented. Dehydrated. But alive. Physically, she bore no fresh injuries. But psychologically? She was fractured. Shattered in ways that don't show up on MRI scans. Her testimony became the backbone of the prosecution's case. She spoke clearly. Calmly. Like someone trying to anchor herself to reality by using her voice as rope. He watched me for months. He knew what kind of cereal I ate. What side of the bed I slept on. He'd mapped out my fear before I even knew I was afraid. She described the room. The foam-padded silence. The protein bars. The constant cold. And one phrase he'd repeated to her, night after night. You don't have to die to disappear. You just have to become unremarkable. The case went to trial in late 2019. Public defenders didn't stand a chance. There was too much DNA from the apartment. The management company says it's under renovation. That it's being remodeled for future tenants. That it'll be available soon. But locals know better. Longtime residents whisper about it behind locked doors. Because no one stays in 3B for more than a few weeks. The walls creak at odd hours. Light bulbs blow out. Tenants say the room feels wrong, too cold, too still. And sometimes, just sometimes, they say you can hear something. Knocking. Not loud. Soft. Rhythmic. From inside the walls. The video fades to a static shot of the apartment door. Unit 3B. Peeling paint. Rusting hinges. A dented peephole. No name on the mailbox. No welcome mat. Just silence. And then, just before the screen cuts to black, 3 slow knocks. Tap. 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 Kayla Monroe now lives under a new name. She works days, keeps her windows locked, and sleeps with the lights on. She still doesn't know how long he was watching her before he made himself known.